This particular podcast is a personal pleasure for me because I'm talking once again with a friend who, before we established contact last week, we hadn't spoken in 10 long years.
Yeah.
Crazy, isn't it, Ale? So just to give a very quick introduction, Ale, I met in Parma when I was living there. He's the first Belgian midfielder I played football with. And yeah, Kevin, he doesn't know anything about football in comparison to Ale. Yeah, and at the time, yeah, I'm sorry, I had to say it. At the time, you were into, is it advertising and marketing? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Zach, for having me here. By the way, yeah, my Belgium roots, definitely. It was a lot of fun, like there in the midfield, right? Playing with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good team, wasn't it? And I mean, the name of the team was quite interesting.
Il poeta, right?
Absolutely.
Poet. Yeah. The poet. Was it poetry that we were like, sort of playing in the field, or for that level was sort of a lot of fun, I have to say.
It was definitely fun. I don't think the type of football we played was particularly poetic, but the camaraderie, the relationships that we sort of very quickly developed, I think you could consider that in some ways poetic. And here we are, Ale, 10 years or even more later, talking again. And you've since moved as well. So you're no longer in Parma either. You've moved to Malta and you're doing something extremely interesting. But before we get to that, there's so much that I'd love to talk with you about, if you don't mind. And some of the topics may be a little bit personal, in which case, if it's too personal, just jump over it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, but I do remember in Parma, you invited us over. We sat down and you were kind of talking a bit about your background and about your traveling. Now, I want to come to some of the subject matter that sort of was related to your trip to Africa. But before that, also, you went on some other trips, which you've traveled to some really interesting places. Would you like to talk a bit about your travels then? Because these have really helped to sort of develop the person that you are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, traveling's always been quite a big part of, like, my life, basically. I've been extremely curious since I was young. I don't know if I got that from my Belgium side of the family or my Italian side of the family, whatever. It was something that I really engaged with, like, different cultures, languages, and religions as well. So I sort of allow myself actually to explore very different cultures. So I did that for work and for pleasure. I mean, as many of like your friends, probably they've been traveling, like they travel all around the world for pleasure. For me, it was like sort of like, to go really to look into the very different kind of aspects of humankind somehow. And I developed what am I today. Probably it's like a mix of different experiences that I've engaged with throughout my life. So yeah, that's right. Probably when I met you, I just came back from Africa. It was like one of those like trips that it's kind of memorable. I was traveling with my ex-girlfriend that you probably met, Milena, and we're traveling backpacking in Zambia, Mozambique, and Botswana. And it wasn't easy, of course. Like, it was like, traveling backpack in those regions. It's connections and everything. It's like very problematic. But what can I tell you? It was an absolutely outstanding experience from a human perspective, definitely.
I mean, if I could also jump in, because there were two stories in particular from Africa, and please also talk about some of your experiences in, in Russia and in Thailand, Indonesia as well, because I'm sure these were fantastic experiences for you. But when talking about Africa, I mean, I've spoken to a number of sort of different, people who I've worked with regards to time management. Yeah, and I always, whenever I'm talking about time management, I always remember that wonderful story that you told me. I think traveling around Africa, I think you had to catch a coach at a certain time, and you were at a bus stop. Please tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah, but you were at a bus stop, and there was a gentleman there, and you
Yeah.
asked when the next bus is going to be, and his response was, "The bus will come when it comes."
Yeah. Yeah, it is exactly like that. I was on the borders between Mozambique and Zambia, and I was trying to cross the border. I mean, when we talk about borders there, it's actually like a lifting bar, in the middle of nowhere. So there's no, like, guard post or wardens on the border. It's actually like you need to wait for a lift and just cross whatever border is. So I was there basically waiting for, I don't know, a few hours, till I got someone with a coach who passed by, and I actually asked him, "Is there anyone around here where I can ask for a lift to get on the other side of the border?" I said, "Well, I can give you a lift if you want. You can just sit in back in the back, and that's how it works." So okay, great. So we packed our stuff, jumped on the back of the coach, and we started waiting. The car was moving, the coach was moving. I was like, "So what's happening now?" "Ah, we need to wait for the petrol." "What do you mean we need to wait for the petrol? I mean, don't you have petrol enough to get on the other side of the border?" "Yes, we do have, but we need to smuggle some." "All right, let's wait. Let's wait a little bit longer." And that, like, 1 hour turned on to like sort of 4 hours under the sun. It was really extremely hot. We were kind of getting like a little bit nervous as well, because like we didn't know exactly what was happening. Luckily, I speak Spanish, so I could sort of interact with them. Mozambique people, they speak Portuguese, so we had a chance to have, like, an understanding of what was happening. And basically, I realized that they were sort of waiting for fake documents in order to cross the border for the car. It was like, that's how it is, basically. So we waited and waited, and finally we managed to, to take off and go. But the road was not like, it was like a 30 kilometers way. I mean, the border was not like something extremely, such a long journey to get there. But it took us, like, since we left, it took us like, I don't know, 3-4 hours, because we had to stop every 10 minutes to pick up some people with bricks, chickens, livestock, and other stuff. So we ended up being on the other side of the border. It was like this caravan of people. It was beautiful. We started interacting with like these women and boys and girls. It was absolutely fantastic. We were really breathing with them, and it was unusual. They thought we were missionaries.
Okay.
No. Yeah, there was like a time management. It's great. In Africa, they say Hakuna Matata, which means take it easy. Just it happens when it has to happen. That's it. Yeah.
I mean,
how long does it take for you to go from a place to another? You don't measure in time. You measure in like distance, as in like it takes probably 2 to 3 days by foot. And so when I'm back, I'll be back when I'm back. So it's interesting. Yeah. Very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, there were also occasions, I do remember having read books where the characters would say, I'll see you on the third sunset, or, when the moon is full, and so on. And you think, okay, what a strange concept of telling the time. But I mean, I mean, isn't this something that we should also kind of learn from? You know, I mean, there is so much that we can learn from with regards to African teachings and so on. And bit by bit, I'm also becoming more aware of some of these things, very slowly, unfortunately. But I mean, this concept of time, we rush around. We're always busy. We never get the chance to sort of sit down and appreciate things. And it seems to me this African concept of, you know, it'll happen when it happens is really actually quite refreshing, isn't it?
It is basically. You touch base basically with your inner self in that regards, because like we are sort of rooted to thinking that we need to be busy all the time, and in reality, it's not. So time management. When we think about time management in work environment, for instance, I've been a manager in different companies, of course, and time is a resource, is a key resource. But the idea of time that we have is very different to I mean, we bring time within an aspect of how can I profit within this time? It doesn't mean necessarily in money wise, but can profit what's the benefit of making this thing in a very accurate and efficient way in order to save time for other activities that I need to do. Fair enough. But that's not what I'm talking about. It's the idea, the concept of time within our life it is extremely valuable if we bring in that sense of letting it go. Just let it go sometimes. I do struggle myself with this idea. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm far from being there with that idea of, being in Africa all the time. But yeah, it's sort of open a different door that I never considered before. Sort of really spiritually taking it easy. And it's important, I think. Meditation somehow helps to achieve that little moments. But if you think even meditation, for instance, we struggle to find 10 minutes a day to meditate, which is 10 minutes really out of 24 hours. Do we allow ourselves to be in peace and in connection with ourselves for just 10 minutes? And it's refreshing, don't get me wrong. And it's necessary in our contemporary type of lifestyle. But yet, 10 minutes?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've also spoken, with other people. I spoke with Tanya the other day about mindfulness. It was part of the previous podcast that we had, and this sort of awareness, of what is happening around you. That you really have to sort of slow down, step out of the fast lane, and just sort of observe life as it occurs. And become really aware. What are you doing? What is happening around you? What is your environment telling you? There are lots and lots of messages which we can actually sense, but we're living far too quickly to be aware of. And there's so much information there in the natural world, in the organic sense, that we don't really appreciate.
That's the meaning of mindfulness. Basically, you just sit and allow yourself to be present in that moment. And it's fundamental, if you think, because we are not present, we're never present. Just let life go and rush behind it, and we're not just sitting and letting our observation be there. We should observe ourselves and life a little bit more with an unbiased eye. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Unbiased, sorry. Yeah, definitely. Which normally just put our prejudice into what's happening in front of us. We should step back from that and just observe neutrally.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, to be able to extract yourself from the moment, and to be able to completely analyze it in the way that it should be analyzed. But there's also this thing of emotions, and it kind of leads me to another topic that you mentioned. I mean, and I want to please also remind me later to ask you about some of the other countries that you visited. But talking about emotions, you told us about this really this deep experience that you had, and you told, I mean, this was more than 10 years ago, yeah? So Black Lives Matter was not topical at the time. But you had an experience in a bar in Africa. Do you remember how that story went?
Somehow, yes. I know somehow. Unfortunately, I still remember that, and it was a shock for me. It is still a shock thinking that some type of segregation are still happening nowadays. So basically, it was in Mozambique, in a town called Barra, and it's like bungalows on the beach, like, idyllic place where to be a digital nomad or a traveler. So it was nice, and suddenly I remember there were like, it was ran by white guys. I didn't even question why, but eventually I got to understand that, got to know that some of them, or the majority of them actually, were how's it called, Boers, and moved from South Africa to Mozambique after the fall of apartheid. So they moved there, bought the land, and ran these nice places using local workers. So black people, basically. And what happened is, at a point, it was something really stupid happened. I think one of these workers was like sort of cleaning the bungalow and locked the bungalow with the key inside. Something really stupid. I mean, really, like, can happen to everyone. And this big, huge white guy lost it completely. He lost it over something that was like not even worth, like, getting a bar of being angry. So yeah, I sort of stepped in. This guy was a mountain. I mean, I'm small compared to that. Like, if like huge, typical Boer guy from South Africa was huge, and was yelling very aggressively to these two guys actually. And I stepped in and said, dude, I mean, they really didn't do anything. I mean, it's all okay. It's under control. And this guy basically addressed me like saying, I can't repeat the same words, of course, but basically said, you should just take your white A back to Europe, you hippie, or something like that, just because it was like, sort of taking the side of this guy and say everything is under control. So eventually I didn't give anything. I took this guy and I said, we sat down somewhere, and I offered them what we had in the kitchen. Well, once we opened the bungalow, basically. And we sat down with them, and the one was a painter and the other one, can't remember, but they were like really humble, beautiful people. Yeah, I was kind of shocked the day after I left, beforehand, because we couldn't stay there. Basically, I just decided that it was like horrid. So yeah.
But also, if I remember correctly, these two guys these black workers that you stood up for, they said to you, look, there's no point, because when you go, we will suffer. Do you remember this?
Yes, I did. Actually, more guys actually came to us. Like two or more of these guys came to us and said, "You should let it go. It is what it is. Basically, they said, that's our situation. So we don't own this land, although they were like locals. We don't own this land. They own it, so they can do whatever they want. They set the rules. They pay when they pay, if they pay, and we can't choose. Mozambique at the time, and I think even today, it's one of the poorest countries in the world, and there's no work. There's like high AIDS spread infection. So yeah, healthcare, it's not existent. So you are considered lucky if you have one of those, like, work. Modern slavery. I don't know. Maybe it's too far saying that, but definitely was really, really sad. and talking about 2011. So we're not talking about like during or right after the appetite. So, yeah.
No, but I mean, these are sort of the tales that kind of stick with me, because this is something which I would never have experienced myself at first hand. So to listen to you say, and yet the thing is, this, as you said, it's an extremely emotional experience that you've had, and it saddens you to recall it. And I'm sorry for that. And yet, still, when you think of Africa, you think of the magic and the majesty of the country and the indigenous population. And so for you, your trip was, as you said before, like a dream, wasn't it, Africa?
Yes and no, in the sense that I really let myself, I allow myself to explore, and I was not really, planning much, like, going to these beautiful, idyllic places like, safari and whatever. I really went like, scattered places like Maputo, for instance, the capital of Mozambique is, it's not idyllic, let me tell you. But I was fascinated by it, by seeing it, by living it, and that was like throughout the whole trip. Even when I was like in Livingstone in Zambia, or in Botswana, I just allow myself to merge with the locals, with local cultures. So that was where I get my interest from. It's not really like taking a nice picture of an elephant. Yeah, that's nice too. Don't get me wrong. It's an experience, but probably more for my son, who's like, I don't know, 6 now, than for me. But then it was like more interesting in people than probably nature, because they're
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Was that also your approach in India, or did you have a specific destination in India?
No, not quite. That was very different. Years before, I was basically assigned from the corporation that I used to work for to develop the market basically in Southeastern Asia. So I was based in Thailand at first, then Indonesia, then I had to go to India, Russia, and so I traveled that region from west to east. It was very interesting. But that probably sense of like, it's, I don't know if it's innate or you have to, work on your curiosity, but I definitely allow my curiosity to take over onto my, planning experience, and just like go and explore. So whenever I had time off, even in Thailand or Indonesia, I just went and explored. So I established great connection till nowadays. I mean, like I'm in touch with my friends in Indonesia and Thailand and Vietnam as well, former colleagues or partners or whoever. But yeah. But I took that with me even today. I mean, I am what I am because I probably come from that. So that experience in Africa was truly, truly shocking. Probably was a bit naive, I have to be honest with you, because you jump or land in a place with your, like, sort of openness or open background, and you just like land into a place where they struggle a lot. So from my Western eyes, I probably didn't quite grasp the whole scenario behind that. I admit that, but yet it was shocking. It was like truly like, I can't say on your podcast.
Okay,
you can
fair
imagine.
Enough. Yeah, I can understand. Okay, and I mean, okay, so Africa, let's we'll maybe come back to with regards to in general sort of experiences and so on. But you also did documentaries in Kosovo and Morocco. Yeah,
yeah. There was documenting life in that sense was like part of this like journey. So yeah, I've been working in an advertising agency which I founded. But at the very beginning, there was an idea of like becoming a sort of production company for documentaries, which wasn't successful because like the market for that, it's tiny and it's very, very hard to find like, fundings. So we sort of dropped the idea after a couple of years. But the very first 2 years since the company was born, I had the sort of opportunity to shoot a couple of documentaries, one in Morocco and one in Kosovo. Yeah, was was weird because like the documentary from Kosovo happened a week after I came back from Morocco, so it was really bam bam, one after the other. Two completely different experiences. The one from Morocco was about caravans, basically like Berbers working and living in Europe and moving back to the desert, almost on the border with Algeria, and bringing back like, goods, medicines and clothes and toys to local population. So we're basically documenting this trip, this long trip. Actually, it took was quite a long trip, almost a couple of months, a month and a half, where we crossed the Mediterranean on a ferry from Genoa to Tangier, and then all the way down to Algeria. And a week after, actually, I got an email from a friend when I was in Morocco and said, that I have connection here in Kosovo, and what's happening? That Kosovo is declaring the independence, unilateral declaration of independence. So, yeah, I just came back to Italy after Morocco packed up quickly, and we went by car to the freezing Kosovo. So I went from 40 to -10, and temperature there was reflecting the moment that people were living. Was really cold, was scary, and it was something that I never imagined of doing in my life. But yeah, crossed the checkpoints between Serbia and Kosovo, found myself with a rifle in our heads because we had a fake press plate on our car, and they let us go eventually. And so we basically shoot a documentary about Serb enclaves within Kosovo during on the moment, so during the day of the declaration of independence, unilateral. So yeah, was very interesting. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows the diverse sort of projects that you've worked on and your interests. And what really comes through is that you're a real people person. You have a very how's it, advanced sense of humanity and empathy, and that really comes through. At least for me, I have I know you, and so therefore I could see it, in the way that you interacted with people.
Yeah, probably we should ask my wife. She's the same opinion. Yeah, I'm interested in people, definitely. This can, whether it's for for my profession, for my career, for my work, or for leisure and travel. So yeah, definitely that's where I go to, exploring people. What more beautiful is that, accepting, seeing, and viewing, and merging with different cultures. I truly can't find anything more exciting than that. I have to be honest. It's not like a lifelong career. It's not like, what do you achieve in your career, but actually like, having a bag of experience to grow as a human being and share it. I think I would like to share it with my son, definitely. I would like him. We are teaching him now how to express himself in such a diverse world and accept diversity not accept, sorry, that's even wrong. Embrace diversity as an opportunity to grow as human being. What else can you give back if you don't grow as human, but just as as a professional?
No,
I mean,
absolutely.
I can't
Absolutely.
distinguish the two things, like being a human, a decent human being, and being a great professional. If you are both, that's great. But I can't think that you are actually able to grow as a professional if you are not a great human being behind it.
Mm.
I'm not saying that I'm a great human being. I'm just saying that you need to nurture that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's important never to be a perfect human being, because then the challenge is gone. You know, recognizing that we are imperfect means that we have to fight to reach somewhere, even if it is beyond our reach. But we still always try to improve ourselves. And I think that's why we have to accept imperfection, and use it as a means and a motivation to challenge ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you entirely. I mean, imperfection is a challenge, an opportunity actually to grow and to expand that imperfection to something that it doesn't need to be perfect. It just can be something different or something else. So embrace that. It's an
Absolutely.
opportunity. You miss an opportunity, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Not you,
absolutely.
as in you, Zach.
I've missed so many opportunities. Yeah,
Same here.
yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things. We can't take every opportunity that comes our way, but I mean, again, yeah, that's mindfulness, yeah, as in being aware of where we are, be conscious of what there is around us. But I think also this element of appreciating things. I mean, you just mentioned before, you've been in some places, you experienced some really difficult things, but where you are, where I am now, we live in countries where we have to admit we are so privileged, and if there is some way that we could improve the lot of other societies, I think it was at least to fight for minority groups, to fight for those who are very good at fighting for themselves, but fighting alongside them doesn't necessarily damage their struggle. It should help, and I hope that's what we can contribute.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to pass down this message to my son in a way of, like, him being himself in this world, and definitely stand up, stand up for what's right. That's it. I mean, it takes courage, don't get me wrong, but it is, I mean, what's worth living for? You know,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
need to just actually see what's wrong in our society and take a side and make it better.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely important.
I mean, there's this African proverb which says it takes a whole village to raise a good child. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's so meaningful in so many different ways, exactly as you say. And to be honest, it also kind of makes me think now today about this controversy with UEFA and whether or not the stadium in Munich is going to be illuminated in the colors of the rainbow for
Right.
the Hungarian game. And
Yeah.
UEFA has said that they can't, they shouldn't, or if they do it, they'll be fined. What are your thoughts on that, Ale? Because if it takes society to raise a good child, what message does it send if they don't illuminate the colors? Because I hope that they will illuminate it in the colors of pride. And if they're fined, that's a different matter.
Look, um, it takes good politics, and I don't want to go there in your podcast, of course,
Go for
but
it, man. Don't worry about it. Feel free. Let's take that adventure.
it takes good politics and not being necessarily enlightened. It just needs to open your eyes to what the society is screaming for, which is not necessarily right, but it's like there are so many big topics that are unaddressed or unseen, and it's a shame that actually politics politicians are not really doing much for that. I mean, there are good guys up there, don't get me wrong, but definitely it's not enough. It's definitely not enough. I sometimes feel like when you read, I'm sure you do as well, when you read some magazine, newspapers, Twitters, I feel like we are from back in the Middle Ages. I do. I really feel like reading some comments, some opinions, and uh, they are kind of like, uh, really far from what society is now.
Or should be, or should be.
Or should be, probably, yes, definitely. But looking back at the States, last 4 years been really, really a slap in the face for many, human rights activists and environmental activists, call it whatever. It's been really, really hard. So, and this is not just the States. I could say in Europe, we are sort of facing the same challenges, like in blind politics, basically. So, yeah, what I do think about that is that we probably should have a common consciousness as ordinary people and trying to make a big sort of come out for that. I know it's not enough, but G8 back then taught us lesson that it was really, really hard to fight the establishment. So, but it's necessary that we keep on doing that. Otherwise, we don't progress as a society, don't progress as a culture. We just don't have a collective consciousness in that sense. Yeah, it's like, yeah, complicated, but we should not stop fighting for that, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I would also add to that gender equality, among other things, among the issues that you mentioned as well. And definitely these, if somebody wakes up in the morning and says, I've got nothing to do today, then pick a topic and then, go and fight for it. Because there are so many, ills within our society that requires support. Not necessarily financial. It can simply be a thought. It can be your time, whatever it is. There's definitely something to give there. Yeah. Okay. No,
gender equality. It's quite a big topic. Still nowadays, the crystal roof, especially in science, women they can't reach apex positions. Still, it's even that it's I don't know. There's this sort of castle that like people living in a castle, they can't break through those big walls because that's the establishment. We really need to change this. It's fundamental. I think like a world ruled by women, it would be so much better, so much better. In all honesty, I mean.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there would definitely be. I would like to think there would be less war. Because I think, generally speaking, and it's difficult to generalize, but I think generally speaking, however, if I may, I think men tend to lean towards, sort of flexing their muscles too often when, I mean, for example, Mrs. Merkel has shown, there is a different way. And whether somebody believes in her politics or not, that's a different matter, but the approach that she has shown to certain things, I think, has been really to be appreciated. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I hope it will continue in Germany with a female chancellor. So I think Mrs. Baerbock would be a very good choice. But time will tell. Time will tell. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
agree with you. It will be interesting to live in a world ruled by women or other genders as well.
yes.
I think that would be different, no? Because being ruled in a world by men. We haven't gone as far as we probably could have done. It's time to give others a chance.
Yeah, I'm coming from a country which is very conservative in some aspects. Society is really conservative, and there are like expression in like some politics that are really like I would say really dark ages, like which family-centered role of men and women. I do get that, but I profoundly disagree with that. And I'm always trying to understand the other party or the other part, so to speak. Not in the sense of trying to find a justification, but they have their own reasons. And I think it's important for a debate to really allow the other, what were really controversial, to flow in and get that. Though, I mean, nowadays, some topics they should be like addressed in a very different way. And as I said, I come from Italy, which is not that open to certain topics, say LGBT rights, and like it's still far from being achieved, like equal rights in that sense. Far, very far. We're in good companies, unfortunately, with other countries. Here in Malta, for instance, they have like it's interesting, actually. Interesting in a in a sort of ironic way. There is a law here in Malta where women cannot abort. I mean, if you are a woman who wants to decide, that decision in itself is a huge struggle. Imagine. So you are wanted to have an abortion, you have to fly abroad to have it because it's illegal in Malta. On the other hand, they have gay marriage, and they have LGBT rights way more advanced than Italy, for instance, where abortion is allowed. So there are these
inconsistencies, yeah.
Inconsistencies, and we are talking about neighboring countries and within EU. So yeah, it's always like a bit of an eye opener, when you look at like local politics versus what's happening in the world. So the application of like certain rules, regulation, laws on a local level are very different from what we are talking, you and I, for instance. Very disconnected. There's a disconnection in that sense,
Yeah, and I mean, you bring Malta in at a good time in the conversation as well. So, okay, what inspired you to move from Italy to Malta? I mean, Malta, I know, I've heard it's a lovely little island. It's steeped in history. But what is it that took you there?
Look, it's a lovely little island, not in the last 3 days, because there's these Sahara winds hitting the island. So it's like 40, 41 degrees, to give an idea. So it can be very intense in summer. It's rich in history, very, very rich. And they're really proud of their history. It's a nice thing to see, definitely. What brought me here? My wife, she is Australian, but she has Maltese roots. So her parents were here. But that's not the main reason, actually. She didn't want to come here in the first place. She actually wanted to move to Australia. I came here because basically in 2018, I was still managing my company in Italy, food, wine, advertising agency, digital advertising agency company, which was doing well, but I actually wanted to expand abroad and Malta looked not too far, and not the same country, because it's a sort of an Anglo-Saxon world where we had the opportunity basically to interact with, so the UK, US, Australia as well, from Malta. So to establish operations here, so we opened a branch office in Malta, and I moved here to basically grow this spin-off from the main company in Italy. It happened that during the time I had the opportunity to sell, was kind of unexpected and probably not really wanted at the very beginning. But then I let it go, and then I sold the company, and I kept my sort of branch office here as a consultancy firm, where I started doing consultancy for other brands, like into food and wine, which is like a passion for me, and not stereotype Italian, and not in that sense, really. Really liking for brands who needs to market their products in the world, and strategy consultancy for that. Yeah, and it happened that during COVID, or because of COVID, most of the businesses here and all over the world went down. So was mine. Basically, I had contracts canceled and things that were totally unexpected, including traveling. So, but the most beautiful thing that happened during COVID was that my daughter was born. Although she grew up seeing people with masks, wearing masks. So now that we're taking off masks, she's sort of crying because she's not used to see people with a thing that is open in the face for her, but she will adapt soon. So what happened that during the lockdown, I'm quite interested in fitness and action sports. I'm a climber. I don't know if you remember, but always been huge into climbing. I love my climbing session in the Dolomites. I went into the Andes as well in South America. So it happened that no one could do anything, of course, not going to gyms. They were in lockdown, or having a nice session outside. Everyone was stuck home. So I thought of with an Irish friend, actually. He gave me this sort of this sparkle to develop this idea. I said, wow, that's great. Let me look it up. And no one was doing something similar-ish. So I contacted my old colleagues, basically, from the corporation that I used to work for, one of the main digital companies in the 2000s. And he loved the idea, so we started developing this concept, which we launched basically a couple of months ago. And it's sharing. It's within sharing economy. I don't know if you are familiar with that.
Well, let's say that there are people. Let's say that I have no idea. So I mean, please feel free to also tell us the name of your company, but also tell us what the sharing economy is. So pretend that I have no idea.
Absolutely. So first of all, the project, the name of the company is called BriskBy, or Brisk By, BRISBKY. Which is basically it's a marketplace where you go and you can rent out, so you can list your items, sport or fitness gear, whatever you have or you want to make money out of. You can rent it out, or if you are a renter, you can just go on the platform and rent your favorite windsurf, skateboard, bicycle, or canoe, or treadmill, if you are wanting to do fitness at all. So basically, it's like an Airbnb of fitness and action sports equipment. Okay, you know Airbnb.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, good. So basically, it's the very similar idea, but within, as I said, the sharing economy industry, which is was hit hard, the industry during COVID. But I have more than hopes. Actually, I actually have market research pointing at a big growth of this industry in the next few years. So I'm hoping that this festival is gonna serve a purpose for people to share their own gear. Secondly, it's good for the environment. I mean, we don't need to always buy, but also you can even rent for the time that you need, like for 1 hour, instead of buying a whole new treadmill that you use 3 times a year. You can rent it out for like 1 hour or a day or a week, however you want. So you can appreciate your fitness or your action sports experience in a very different way with more variety. So you can change your gear whenever you want without committing to buy one and being stuck with that. So it comes from that, from a need actually. There were so many people here in Malta that really wanted to practice fitness at home and safely, because it was a matter of safety back then as well. So we sort of tested the idea against the Maltese market. The response was terrific. So we decided to really dive into that and create this platform. And now we're addressing 3 markets at the moment. We are onboarding supply at this point in time, which is not just private or individuals, but they can be business-like. So say a gym or a retail shop, they can rent out their gear if they have or if they want. And now we are in Malta, the Netherlands, and Ireland for the moment, but we are expanding throughout the rest of Europe, hopefully very soon. Bootstrapped, meaning that it's completely funded by us. I'm the founder, and I'm actually putting in some good amounts of good batch of money to develop this. But soon in the future, we might have private investors, but we are not ready yet. But yeah, let's see. We got a grant actually from Malta Enterprise. Credit to them. There was this. There was an opportunity to send qualitative project to Malta Enterprise. We decided to submit ours, and they said it was good. So we pitched the project. They liked it, and they funded us. So for now, so far so good.
Oh, fantastic. So, I mean, let's do an example. Yeah. So let's say, for example, I've bought a running machine, and I haven't used it in 3 months because I'm just a lazy git. How would I get it to you, who you want to do it? You want to run, let's say, you want to, for whatever reason, but you don't want to spend 2,000 euros on a top a running machine. So how do you link us together?
Yeah, basically you list your running machine or your rower machine, your stepper, onto Brisbee on the platform. You create your profile and you list your item, and then you decide throughout an availability calendar when to rent it out. So you can say, in winter, I'm going to use it, so I'll make it unavailable for rental from January to March. In April, this date, this date, this date. In May, the whole month, it's available for rental. So whoever comes to the platform and can see that Zach is renting out his stepper, his rower, his running machine, he can decide to rent it out for the sort of time that Zach has decided. So if Zach said that he can rent it out for by the hour, I can rent it out by the hour. If it's by the week, it's going to be by the week, by the day, or by the month. So it's quite flexible in terms of like for how long you can make it available and for how long I can rent it out from you. So it's basically what we are. It's like an intermediation service. It's again, it's like Airbnb.
And then would, for example, somebody come and pick up the machine? Would they come and use it in my home or my garage?
Oh, that's great. That's a great question. So far, we allow just gear sharing, so equipment sharing. So basically, I am coming to your place. I collect your running machine, bring it home, use it, bring it back. Okay, running machine is quite bulky and heavy, maybe in that sense. But say skis, a pair of skis, or a bicycle. I just come to your place, collect it, use it, and give it back. Of course, all the items are insured, so all the renters are completely insured. So no problem with that. Now, what we are building is alongside, but it's not available yet. It's a new feature, which will allow private, we call them private gyms, just to differentiate them from commercial gyms. Say that Zach has a room or a spare room where he has a stepper, or maybe he has a stepper, a running machine, and a treadmill. You can rent out your room, not the gear per se. So you basically can make use of your own private gym and rent it out. Like there are many garage gyms. I was telling you, like in the conversation we had in the UK, for instance, so many garage gyms, private gyms, basically. They are owned by someone, but they are not used, not much. I mean, yes, they do their own private sessions, but they can rent them out if they want for whatever price they ask, for how long they want. So this is kind of a new idea that we are working on at the moment. And hopefully that's going to be a sort of, we think that it could be disrupting in traditional fitness industry, or at least an alternative to traditional gym membership. So that could be something new. Yeah. So we're working on that. But it's more related to space sharing rather than gear or equipment sharing, you know? Yeah. So I rent out my space for that. I've seen a new concept, for instance, of pool sharing, private pool sharing, which is interesting. That's similar. So imagine it's the same concept. You have a private pool, you can rent it out for an amount of time for the price that you ask. Same concept, Airbnb for that.
Yeah. Or a garden, for example, if you want to do a garden party, and just,
yes.
I mean, it's endless, isn't it? The possibilities. I mean, what about, for example, like these mobile gyms, where you essentially have these like vast trailer, and you can just stick lots of different machines within the trailer, and they sort of move around. And I mean, there are so many different concepts, I guess, that you could introduce, aren't there?
Love them. Yeah, that it's like, sharing economy takes roots within like reusing the infrastructure that is available around you, or the resources that are already available around you. So you don't really inject in the system more resources. Like for instance, a trailer, as much as I love the idea, that would be in any case like setting up a truck which is going around, and probably to scale up that business means that you have to add more trailers. I like that, but it's less scalable and less environmental friendly, I would say. No. If I come to your place, because I'm pulling up my app and I see that there's a private gym around me that is available right now. In the next 5 minutes, I just quickly go to Zach's place and I'm do my workout for like half an hour, and that's it. I am not reusing anything than what there is already on the, on around me.
Yeah.
So it's basically the concept of sharing economy. So making use of what's already available without having to create more. We already have so much stuff around us. Like let's decrease, not increase.
No, of course. I mean, and this concept of reusing, I think it's been with society for a long time. It's just that we kind of went through, and this may be the fault of these sort of large manufacturers, where if they made perishable goods in a sense that it was far easier for the goods to perish, basically, because they felt they made more money from selling new items than maintaining or increasing the quality of the items that they created in the first place. So there aren't too many, for example, cars or other kinds of goods which have a high life cycle, not like they used to perhaps in the 80s. Whereas obviously what you're introducing here is that you have these I suppose single-use items in a sense that they are used for a specific purpose. So if it's a rollerblade, so you don't want to use your rollerblades every day, and maybe they've been sitting there and I don't know, maybe you've pulled a muscle and you can't use it for the next 6 weeks. Somebody else can come and use those rollerblades, so you're taking advantage of the item without the necessity of creating it again and using up more resources.
You don't need to buy more than what you need, basically. Think about how many times you are really using your winter, for instance. Okay, I'm talking about something specific which you are likely to be passionate about. If you bought a winter, it's because you really love doing windsurfing. But realistically, how many times you're going to go out there in the sea? Unless you are in Malta, fair enough, I get that. But if you are in Berlin and you are passionate about, I don't know, I remember there was like surfing on a fake river in Berlin, but I can't remember. I saw it once. There's like they made this stream, artificial stream where you can basically surf. So I don't know, if you're passionate about surfing, for instance, how many times are you really going out there and doing kite surfing? I mean, if you're lucky with the lifestyle that we have nowadays, say 20 times a year, 50 times a year, all right, you still can rent out your gear the other days, the other times, the weekends that you are not going out there, and you can get some little money back, or some money back if you want. You can make money out of that, definitely. And me, as someone who wants to rent rather than like buying a windsurf, who I'm gonna use it like 50 times a year, and which I would never pay back for the time that I'm using, let me rent it out for like, I don't know, 20 euros an hour, for instance, instead of like spending a couple of thousand I'm spending for the time that I'm using it. And I'll change it. I can choose another one next time, choose another one again next time. I don't need to be stuck to something that might break in the future, or I might get bored of in the future. So yeah, it's called rental generation. It's basically, and probably for youngsters, they get that more. So ownership, the concept of ownership will somehow change in the future. Owning a house for youngsters is less likely than for our generation, for instance, which is like, the first hormones, so important, so relevant. It's not really like that, and probably young generation are going to change the pace of the idea that's behind ownership and switching to renting more than that. So we want to be there, and that's the idea basically behind it, within fitness and action sports, of course. Probably in the future we're going to connect with like other type of services. For instance, we are talking with a company in Italy who's doing they basically have a platform for practitioners say personal trainers, for instance. So you can basically throughout our platform in the future, you can rent or book a garage gym and have your favorite personal trainer. You're gonna meet up there and you do your session if you want. So it will be extremely flexible in that sense, and potentially like could expand to many different type of services to can provide. Yeah.
I mean, would that also, for example, be like I don't know, virtual personal trainers? Like, for example, let's say there's somebody who's built up a profile, they're in the US, but has lots of followers on on your platform in Malta or in Europe. Can they book this person for a sort of virtual workout, and they watch through the app like a video link up? And they can say, you need to do more of this, you need to do more of that, and so on. I mean, is there an opportunity to also develop it into a communicative platform where you interact with people who would have these kinds of services? I mean,
thanks for asking, because this is a great question. We have been looking into that model for a while, especially during COVID, because of lockdown, of course. So social distancing was a necessity rather than something that I wanted to do. But there are already many, I would say, players in developing ideas in that space that we might use an external third party to develop that rather than do it ourselves. There are already many apps allowing that sort of connection. So we might partner up with one of these third players and integrate with them.
In a sense, reuse basically.
Yeah, we are not developing anything new in that sense, like a communicative platform. It's great. I love the idea, absolutely. And I think it's relevant in the future. If someone is renting out a treadmill or lifting weights, for instance, lifting bars, and they want to have a sort of body, total body, how's it called, session with a personal trainer, they can definitely do it online, but it will be an integration with someone who's already doing that rather than building the whole concept ourselves. So we will rely a lot on partnerships in the future. Definitely.
Yeah, it sounds great, and also this the idea, the ambition to extend it bit by bit, into Europe as well. I mean, it's another adventure, isn't it? Really, basically.
Yes, it is. It is. I put together marketing, my experience in the digital world, advertising and marketing, together with a passion with sports in that sense. We've been playing together football, which is my #1 sport, of course. And that I'm stereotype Italian, sorry. I get that. I can live with that. But no, definitely climbing and everything. Bringing these things together, it makes me feel well. I think it's there's a lot to achieve, and it's a fun journey. I see a lot of fun in this journey. I don't see necessarily the new unicorn. To be honest with you, I couldn't care less about unicorns. I really couldn't care less. And I think it's a pumped way of, I probably don't want me to get there.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been interacting with a lot of VCs and injecting huge money into great ideas, don't get me wrong, and money is important to develop great ideas. But somehow I think way too many times entrepreneurs, they lose the probably it's naive saying that, but kind of the core, the main scope that put together different minds to develop a core or an original idea. Sometimes they lose that scope in order to chase like money from investors and VCs, and getting this label of unicos. Couldn't care less, to be honest with you.
Fair enough. That's yeah, typically Alessandro, what can I say? Yeah, you know what I like is also there's always room for more discussion, and you may have noticed I like to come back, you know, revisit themes, talk about new things, but also it will be, I mean, how would it be sort of for you to, you know, for us to, you know, maybe have a chat like this every few weeks, and then you can sort of give us like an update, you know, what's going on, and you know, sort of like a diary of a startup, as it were. You know, would that be something that you would you'd be
I'd love to.
Yeah,
I'd love to. Really, thank you for the opportunity. I if it's not getting too boring for you and your audience.
Do you know, if they get bored,
yeah,
then they switch off and listen to something else. I mean, it's freedom of choice, right?
Sure, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Or we give them some more bits of Africa, maybe they're more interested in that. But absolutely, I'm thrilled about that. If you want to touch base anytime, and we just like, you know, keep this conversation alive and see where we at, or where I'm at, that would be great. Thanks. Love it. Love the idea.
Absolutely, that definitely. And you know, for me, it's also a record of a great chat with you know, a really good friend, and you know, somebody who I've missed a lot over the last few years, Ali, I have to say. So you know, I'm happy that we've managed to reestablish you know, our contact. Yeah, lovely chat, and yeah,
yeah, it
what
was,
can I say? Yeah,
we could say something in Italian, because you speak Italian better than me almost. But it was absolutely amazing getting in touch back with you, and let's keep on doing this. Definitely. Facciamolo.
sì, dai, proviamo. Vediamo come va.
Proviamoci.
Sì, allora, grazie mille. Sì, dai, ci sentiamo presto.
Grazie mille, Zach. It's been a pleasure, and let's speak soon.